Okay, so far I've talked about self-awareness, I've talked about self-management and social awareness. I've talked about what each of those are and what we can do to develop and and enhance those. I want to talk about the last attribute now, which is relationship management. Now, this is the attribute that is a result or the byproduct of what we've done so far. So if we have if we have good self-awareness, we have good social awareness, and we can read individuals in the room well in terms of emotional moods and feelings, and we can regulate and control our emotional responses so that it is appropriate to those that emotion of individuals and the room, we're going to get a positive outcome in relationship management. So relationship management is using our awareness of our emotions and the emotions of others to influence interactions to achieve a successful outcome. And that outcome will be different depending on what it is. It's the context of what's going on. So it might be about um, getting someone to be motivated and respond in a particular way to a challenging situation, or it might be that it's about getting somebody to stop and and genuinely reflect on what the outcomes of their own behaviors have been. That might be the successful outcome on its own. Um, Relationship management takes time, effort, and skill. So getting to these outcomes is something that sometimes actually takes a bit of time to get through. So it's not oh we can wham bam we're done. It sometimes is an outcome of a long journey of self-awareness, a long journey of social awareness, a execution of a plan that is going to take a while around self-management to get to this outcome that we've been seeking. But in essence, relationship management is really the byproduct. It means a positive outcome in relationship management isn't something that we do in this attribute. It's really something that has uh, come as a result of good self awareness, good social awareness, and good self management. Then we're going to get positive relationship management. And that is the outcome that we were striving for in the first place in terms of managing the interaction. I want to stop and talk. So they're really. So I've just gone through the four attributes and explain what they are and how we can develop, particularly the top three, and then how it leads into relationship management. But I now just want to, in terms of finalizing on this tutorial video, just talk a little bit about encouraging others to do the same thing. So we're developing our emotional intelligence. And what we want to do as a leader is we also want others to develop their emotional intelligence as well, because the most effective teams are where everybody takes a good leadership role. And by doing that, everybody's demonstrating good emotional intelligence, and that's going to build the relationships within our team, both internally with internal stakeholders, but also externally with our external stakeholders, such as clients, suppliers, and so forth, investors, if that be the case. So let's talk a little bit about encouraging others to improve their emotional intelligence. Well, one of the first steps about getting others to develop their emotional intelligence and encourage that is to get people to start thinking about the things that we've been talking about what are they feeling, what are their emotions, what are the triggers for those things, and how can we express that? Because a critical part of that is that sharing of those emotions so that people know how they're feeling authentically, rather than trying to bury everything under. So effective leaders encourage and welcome expressions of feelings and emotions. Uh, One of the traps that particularly young leaders make new to the role is where when you don't have a lot of confidence in your ability, is that you tend to avoid expressions of or tend to avoid encouraging people to express their feelings or emotions, or you tend to avoid situations where people are going to be expressing those for you because you're not confident in your ability to deal with them. In a progressive modern day team, now, I must say this was definitely not the case 60, 70 years ago, but in our current social norms, where you have a team of diverse individuals that reflect our current social norms. Progressive high-performance teams will encourage individuals to express feelings and emotions because it gives us an opportunity to work through those, to resolve those, rather than to not address them and have them fester and grow and eventually lead to large-scale conflict, which leads to things such as people being alienated, people feeling disengaged, to increase absenteeism, increase turnover. So one of the things that we want to do as leaders, especially around this idea of emotional intelligence, is really encourage people to, in a constructive and positive way, express how they're feeling. And having the mechanisms in place for that. So things like regular communication mechanisms such as meetings or toolbox stand-ups, scrums in some cases, encouraging emails, encouraging instant messaging if that's one of your platforms, or even just management by walking around to have opportunities for people to express and raise concerns that they have. Often, managers and leaders will say, I have an open door policy, but they never make themselves available. So it's only open door in by name, not by actual action. So making sure that we have those mechanisms in place so that we say, look, we've got an open door policy. I want you to come and see me, but then the access to us is really easy, whether it's through meetings or emails, IMs, or us, pounding the pavement, walking around the business area to see what's going on. But it also, as part of that, is having some really strong values around respect, respectful communication, being open, being honest, telling the truth, being transparent, not having any hidden agendas, being respectful for things like diversity or the validity of people's views, the authenticity of people's views and so forth. Also active listening, so making sure that when people share information with us, be they stories of how they're feeling, that we're genuinely listening to those. We're listening to both the content, we're listening to the emotion in the story. And assertive communication. And assertive communication is this idea of expressing yourself, but listening to the other person as well. So in an effective team of highly emotionally intelligent people, you will see assertive communication where people will say, Tony, I understand that this is how you feel, that when these things happen, this is how it makes you feel. Can I now share with you how I feel about this? So when these things happen, this is how I feel. And now we've got a really good understanding of how this situation impacts on both of us. Now, can we build on that to come up with a positive outcome? And that's an example of assertive communication. Often people mix up this idea of assertive communication with aggressive communication, which is they have this false sense of assertive communication is about being more brash or talking louder or stomping your feet more, and it's not the case at all. It's about getting your message across, but it's also about, really importantly, listening to the other message as well and confirming that you understand that. And of course, as effective leaders, we want to role model the behaviors that we want to encourage and we want to see from others around us. So, we have to be expressing how we feel in a constructive way. We need to be making ourselves available, as I talked about earlier, but we also need to be demonstrating these really strong communication skills such as active listening or working within the values of communication and so forth. And as part of that, then continuing on this idea of developing emotional intelligence in others, is just making sure that the team is aware of what is emotional intelligence. Having conversations as a team about what is emotional intelligence, what are the attributes of emotional intelligence, how does it work, how can we develop it, how can we use to support each other through our development of it, by promoting self-awareness, promoting these learning opportunities where we can maybe look at coaching and mentoring, having support mechanisms, making sure that we have the appropriate values and codes of conducts or standards in performance management framework that supports respectful, open and honest communication, all those things that we talked about in the previous slide. Making sure that we create space for people to have the opportunity for reflection and debrief, so there are support mechanisms in place where we can talk with like-minded professional people about our experience. This is what happened. This is how I responded. I don't know if it was appropriate. What do you think? Can you give me some thoughts on how you would deal with it? How does that calibrate against my response and so forth? And of course, as I mentioned earlier, as leaders, we're not only do we talk the talk, but we walk the walk. We're doing these things. We're constantly developing. It goes back to my very initial point about this idea of we understand that emotional intelligence is really a new area, and we've got so much to learn in that. So we're constantly going, well, how can I get better at it? What can I do? Has there been any more research done in this space that influence best practice? What is best practice? And using that to really do things such as create and maintain our team focus, so that it's enhancing the relationships within our team, and that's going to produce better productivity outcomes. It's going to produce a better understanding amongst our team. It's going to be greater support amongst our team, and that's going to not only improve productivity, but it's going to reduce absenteeism, it's going to reduce turnover and so forth. Things like trust, respect, integrity, those things I talked about earlier. It's going to help us in terms of managing and responding to high stress situations, such as really tight deadlines or major projects, or crunch where everything's sort of coming together in a very short time frame, and expectations of individuals go through the roof, or where there's team changes, where there might be organizational dynamic changes or role changes. It can help in terms of responding to those situations, and just being able to better utilize strengths within the team and mitigate any of those team weaknesses. So that pretty much wraps up on this unit. So there's a lot there, and I've only really just covered off the tip of the iceberg, but just to sort of unpack the fundamental topics and ideas within this unit, and that is, what is emotional intelligence? How does it differentiate from our normal cognitive intelligence or smarts, as I mentioned earlier? What is emotional intelligence? How can we unpack it? Well, we can think about it in terms of self-awareness. What is self-awareness, and what can we do to improve our self-awareness? What is self-management? What can we do to improve that? What is social awareness, and what can we do to improve that? So we've unpacked all those three attributes, and then talked about the fourth attribute, saying if we do those things well, it's going to have a positive impact in terms of our relationship management. And then finally, just to wrap up on this unit, this idea of emotional intelligence. Why is it important for us as leaders, and why is it important for us to sort of feed these ideas down into our team and encourage them to develop emotional intelligence so that it can benefit all of us? Hopefully that's helped to provide some framework for the unit and help you through working through this topic. As I mentioned at the start, it's a really important component of our skill set as leaders and managers. It's often, some people find this unit really challenging because it is a lot of navel gazing. Some people find it really interesting and really jump into it. And again, it depends on individuals and whether we have a preference for a more analytical kind of approach to thinking, or whether we have a more nuanced ambiguous acceptance to it. Some people will have a preference one way or the other, but it is an important element of leadership and management, because we do deal. It is one of the three key competencies of leaders and managers, or skills, and that is the people management aspect, and emotional intelligence is a really important part of that. It's a very shifting, ever-changing skill set, because, as I mentioned earlier, it is influenced by things such as social norms, social expectations, and those things will change over time, and therefore our careers within our careers that will have an influence in the way that we lead and manage, and no more so than in the way that we interact with people, the way that we respond to situations and so forth. So again, it's one of those units where we think about the principles behind the discipline of emotional intelligence, and we think about how we can apply those principles to our leadership style. So hopefully you found it interesting. Good luck with the unit. And as usual, don't hesitate to reach out if you want to discuss anything further, or would like me to elaborate anything further. Thank you very much.